Some people call me a bad apple. Yeah, I may be bruised, but I still taste sweet. Some people call me a bad apple, but I may be the sweetest apple on the tree.
Welcome to the Playing Your Fools podcast. I'm your host, Adam Harvin. Today's guest, fellow comedian, Kobye Latham.
How's it going?
And Kobye's kind of a youngster in comedy. Well, you're 19 years old, right?
18.
18? You're still 18. Shit.
Yeah.
And you just came from a show, right?
Uh-huh.
And at Prohibition. Mm-hmm. How'd that go?
It was all right. I don't know. It was fun. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Is it one of your first shows?
Yeah. Second
one
yeah.
ever? Okay, cool.
First one, I don't know. Actually, never mind. I'm going to say that. Yeah. It was fun. I'm glad I did it.
But yeah, it was, it's a pretty cool place. I haven't done a show there. We've had a couple open mics there before, and I've always liked it there, but.
Yeah, I've never really been to Fort Smith before. I'm not from here.
Yeah.
For people who don't know. So yeah, it's cool, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's good that you're getting into the shows. Of course, like Kobye's been killing it pretty much ever since he started. So,
thank you.
I mean, he's definitely young and talented in it. I can't even imagine being your age and trying to do stand up. Like me at that age, like I took everything so serious. I don't think I don't even know what I would have talked about back then.
When did you start?
I didn't start. I was 31 when I started.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I have stuff to talk about. Like
I forget how old you are.
Yeah, I have stuff to talk about. I have kids. I've got a wife. I've been married. I've got subject matter. I was like at 18 or 19. I don't know what the hell I would even talked about.
I don't know what I'm talking about most of the time. So.
Yeah, and I think that's why I get to have longer jokes. I think it's like I have a material, like I have a story to tell a little bit, But I think I could see how that would affect your style a little bit. Like if you have to kind of do what you know or little observations and stuff, but you don't really have any big long stories yet. That I mean, all that stuff will come. But
I got a few stories.
Yeah, but I mean, you're ahead of the games just starting so early and doing good. You're extremely likable on stage and everything. You got that going for you, and of course you got good jokes. So I mean, you're off to a good start. Which I
appreciate.
And I have a lot to overcome with being nervous and shit on stage. I mean, I've gotten so much better. I've watched some of my old stand-up videos from like when I was like not even a full year in, and like how nervous I was back then to now. It's made a big difference. But it's. Of course, I was really rough at first. I mean, I had good joke writing because it took me I wrote jokes for 2 years before I actually did stand up.
Oh, okay.
So before I even had the balls to get on stage and do it, because at first I was like, maybe I could just be a comedy writer, and I was like, that's not really a thing unless you've done it before. So
that's true.
Like you've got to build up a reputation as a good stand up before you can get a job as a writer. So so when I realized that's not a thing, I was like, I guess I got to suck it up and do it.
Yeah.
And it kind of, got me to the point where I was actually getting on stage. But luckily I had, a decent amount of jokes and some, most of which I still tell today were the first few I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely bailed on some.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely somewhere I'm like, I'm never doing that again. But usually I kill those before I get them to the stage. Mm-hmm. But
I wish someone would have told me to kill a joke that I did tonight, or at Nomads the other day. I don't know if I want to say my joke on a podcast.
I was gonna say, you don't have to do that, but
it didn't do very well.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, I showed him the joke. I was like, "Hey, should I do this joke?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, you should definitely."
Yeah, that's what the open mics are for. Is figure it out there, and then go back and watch the videos and see where you laugh. Because sometimes I'm not a very good gauge for myself on how the joke did, because sometimes they'll be laughing, but I'll be on stage and be like, that sucks.
Yeah. And
then I'll go back and watch the video. I'm like, oh, they laughed. So I was like, they were laughing, but I just wasn't. It's hard to tell. When you're up there in the moment, what's going on. But
that's true.
Today we're gonna nerd out a little bit on anarchy and anarchism. Kobye What do you say? You're a Christian anarchist?
All right. Yeah, I didn't know we would be talking about the Christian part. That's a whole nother episode. But yeah, I'm an anarchist. I would call myself an anarchist. Yeah, which you did start with me being 18, so I can immediately feel the people being
Kobye,
like, "Oh yeah, I was stupid once." Too.
Well, right, yeah. So Kobye is like, just talking to him, like, he's very intelligent and well read on the subject and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's why I felt comfortable having this conversation with him and actually being able to do a podcast on it, because he is well read on the subject and everything. So it's not like just a random 18-year-old that doesn't know what he's talking about. But
yeah. I appreciate it. That's my whole goal. Anytime I talk about anarchy, that's the whole goal, is to just not come across as an insane person.
Well, I mean, you're no matter what, like, if you're an intelligent person and you try to have a serious conversation with somebody, you're going to come off as a crazy person, because the average people are stupid as shit.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, like, if you like everything that comes out of my mouth about economics or politics or anything like that just sounds like a conspiracy theory to most people. But I'm like, if you actually read the history books, or just pay attention to anything, you're like, oh yeah, everything is screwed up and pretty much a conspiracy theory until it's not.
Yeah. The great Emma Goldman, who's one of the queens of anarchy, if you know who she is, she said one of my favorite quotes, which is that the majority cannot reason.
Right. And that's one of the things. So,
and that's not to say that if you don't agree with anarchy, you cannot reason. I'm just saying, like, the majority of people can't think in any shape, form, or fashion.
Right.
You're just going to sound crazy anytime you talk about.
Right. So explain what you mean by, like, your idea of anarchism, because the terms are bastardized, like almost all of them are, and anarchy has multiple meanings to multiple different political parties and all that stuff. So
it does have a lot of different meanings. What is anarchism? There's a lot of answers to that question. I wonder. I guess the question is,
technically it's the absence of government.
Sure. That's a very broad sense of the question. In the anarchist circles, we don't use the word government, we use the word state.
Yeah.
The absence of the state. But see, there's kind of, in a very broad sense, a spectrum of anarchists, and they're more on like the left or the right side.
Right.
And so left anarchists will get mad at you if you say that anarchy is only the abolition of the state, because they want you to understand that it's not just the state, it's the thing that makes the state what it is.
Well, because it comes from it comes from like unions and stuff like that too. So
they're more collectivist, or they don't believe in the.
It's almost socialism, basically. I mean, it's
but
the anarcho-syndicalists are like, they're it's the workers' right to own the production or whatever. So it's almost socialist, but with a lack of government or any authority to government.
Mm-hmm. So they're more also on, like, they don't like capitalism, but when they say the word capitalism, they're not talking about. They have a different definition of other versions.
Yeah, well, they use the term wage slave a lot.
Yeah, Chomsky will say wage slave a lot.
Yeah.
But it's more than just the state. The reason the state is immoral is because it's an unjustified hierarchy, and there's a lot of unjustified hierarchies from the leftist point of view.
Right.
So the right-wing point of view, they want to abolish the state, but if something is immoral for the same reasons as the state is, well, then it's also considered the state in right-wing anarchist ideal. So it's like, yes, statelessness is, but like no government is kind of the only thing that threads between all the different kinds of anarchy. So yes, statelessness is what I mean by anarchy.
Yeah, you just don't recognize authority.
Not necessarily. You don't recognize your authority must be justified. Most of it is not.
Yeah.
And the government is the only one that all forms of anarchy is agreed that is not justified.
Yeah.
And then they have a lot of, because that's a negation, you say that's not justified. Well, then the question becomes, what is justified? Right? And that's what all the different schools of anarchist thought disagree on, is they say certain things are justified or they're not, or they're...
Now, is this just an idea of how you want things to be, or is this something that you actually think could come about?
A Well, okay, so to answer the second part first, I don't think it'll ever happen, no.
Right, okay.
Is it something I want? Of course, yeah. It's absolutely something I want. But not necessarily something I want. It's something I believe
is the right way to do things, right?
Like morally correct.
Right.
I don't think you can morally justify a government. That's my position as an anarchist.
Right. Now, some of the things that come up with anarchy, and like I did the same thing with like I like the anarchy idea. I like the libertarian idea, but I see flaws in both of them.
Okay.
So I don't like fully invest in either one.
Yeah. Could I say something about the word libertarian before?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like the word. A lot of people will call me libertarian. I used to at one point say that I would identify as that word, but I don't like that word for the same. Do you know who Yaron Brook is? He's the head of the Ayn Rand Institute.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't like
heard
the
him
word.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the word anarchy, or he doesn't like the word libertarian because it includes anarchists.
Yeah.
I, for the same exact reason, but on the other side, don't
Right.
like the word libertarian because it includes people who still believe in government.
Yeah, putting labels on anything starts making it complicated, and that's probably why libertarians won't ever be, like, as a political party, won't be a threat to anybody.
No,
because, I mean, even within the Libertarian Party, like, nobody agrees on anything. So, like,
true.
there's so many different variations in there. But
I don't know. I don't know a lot about the Libertarian Party.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty chaotic. I mean, it's just like anarchy. You know, you got left, right, center, and
I would imagine, being that they're like a political party, they're not going to come out and fully say they believe in the abolition of the state. And if they don't do that, well, then I'm not really on their team.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, we don't have free markets, and you know, you can't argue for free markets and then when the game's rigged for the government. So, like, they're playing within a system, so you can't really. The Libertarian Party is at odds with the libertarian philosophy.
That's true.
So,
yeah, I agree with that. Also, the idea of, like, using the state to destroy the state, I don't think that's gonna.
right.
Or you have to have a lot of trust in whoever you vote for, because that's like the.
But one thing,
Sauron,
yeah, like the one thing, like when I see like this a good idea or something like that, or what's seemingly a good idea, I try to play it out and be like, hey, why aren't we doing this? And how could this actually come about? Mm-hmm. And one thing I see the problem with being anarchist or libertarian is there's a minimum level of intelligence that you have to comprehend the subject.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, but I always hesitate to, like, I understand that and I agree with it, but I'm always hesitant to say it because people don't want to. Then because I don't believe that if you disagree with anarchy, therefore you're dumb or you're stupid. But I do think to, like, genuinely consider any radical idea.
Well, to be able to convert somebody else, like, so if you explain it to somebody, and even if they go along with you, for them to be able to explain it to somebody else or truly understand what it is that they're going along with, like, they have to have a certain level of intelligence. And I think for libertarian and anarchism, like, I think that is above average intelligence for you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, and you can't defend either one. Like, if you have average intelligence, you're probably gonna have a hard time defending your belief in libertarianism or anarchy. You're gonna have a hard time defending it because you're not gonna know. You're just not gonna be able to explain the flaws and stuff like that.
I also want to clarify, even though they're kind of similar if you look at it from a far away point of view, libertarian and anarchy are very different.
They are. It's hey, leave me the fuck alone in both kind of that mentality.
Well, actually, I wouldn't say that the more center or the more left anarchists are, hey, leave me alone. It's more of, hey, leave me alone unless you have, like, a justified they're also kind of egalitarian, so they want community. They want people to be equal and love each other and have your community be.
Yeah, I would say libertarians a little more cutthroat in that way. It's,
they're
you know,
more
the free
separatists.
market is going to be
Yeah, yeah.
is going to have a lot of authority to it. It's just not the state. It's going to be, you know, the
Sure.
owners of businesses and production. You know, those those become the authority and not the government. Which that's a issue. But one thing that's about anarchy.
Well, from the anarchist perspective that believes in capitalism and in what you're talking about,
right.
Their argument is that, well, it's not the government, and but they have a justifiable claim to that authority.
Right.
The government does not have a justifiable claim to
right.
in their perspective.
But then you got to. Currency comes to play there, and when currency gets involved, that's where it starts getting real weird.
That's there's a few things that separate the anarchist camps, and one of them is the belief in money.
Right.
I think that's kind of where they go a little too far left is when they say they don't believe in money.
That's how the syndicalists, I think, are.
Yeah. I don't know if they might be, but I know
I think the whole wage slave thing is about not earning a wage.
They believe in bartering, in trading
right.
and stuff. And so I don't know. I think that there could be some problem. I think a society that's one of the first things humans invented is just an advanced form of bartering is
right.
money. Now that you can have some problems with money, like let's say when the government has complete control of money and they can print it and you have to use their money. Well, that's also like too far. So I do think to have a coherent society, you may need money. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's...
you definitely have to have some form of currency. I don't think just bartering, there's definitely problems with just bartering. If you're growing something that nobody else wants, or very few people wants, you're at a disadvantage.
See, that's David Friedman's argument against the left form of anarchies. They don't have a price system, so everything's kind of... Or they believe in the labor theory of value.
Well, you can't own things. You can't own things if there's like...
That's not always true.
I mean, to a certain... Yeah, I mean, it's... To a certain point, you wouldn't have consumerism at all, almost.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Consumerism would... But you could own things at least, especially in a mutualist sense. And that's... Mutualism is like an anarchist form where I think Proudhon, who's coined the term, he said that mutualism would be everyone kind of works for the benefit of everyone else.
Right.
But you could still, he said property is theft. That's his most famous statement. Yeah. But I think he clarified, and I haven't read a whole lot of him, so I need to read more, but I think he clarified and said you can own like things if you have a valid claim to them. So if I take a stick and make it into a spear with my labor, I have a valid claim to own that.
Right.
But I think his argument is that you can't own... There's no way to justifiably own land.
Right.
So land is all communally owned.
Yeah.
And so you can still own things, but just... and then I think the more syndicalism, more that communists would...
You almost never... Nobody's incentivized to develop anything, technology-wise. You would almost lose incentive to progress.
That's the libertarian free market
that's like
argument.
So you're almost, I think both of them, you're almost stuck in a period of time that we've already passed. Like this might have worked in the 1800s.
What, anarchy?
Yeah, anarchy and libertarianism, but both would have been, fairly effective back then. But now that we have technology, it's going to be an issue.
Why would it be an issue? To be anarchistic now?
Now, I do think we are going to get... So, I think we will get to a point with technology where most people's needs are met if we don't destroy ourselves first or give too much power to the government, in the near future.
Power is too much power to the government.
Yeah, but I think we will get... technology will get to a point where almost everybody's needs are met so easily and that we can defend ourselves so easily with technology that we won't need government anymore.
Is that called post-scarcity, I think it's called? Where basically...
Yeah,
everyone's needs are met?
Yeah, if everybody's needs are met and we can defend ourselves on our own, like if our house is...
need a government.
Yeah, if you have constant surveillance of your house, it's basically a bomb shelter and everything,
Yeah.
and you don't really have to worry about anybody invading your space, and the surveillance will be to a point where you can't get away with it if you do come in and break the law, or say it's not even a law, just if you can find that person and track them down and hold them accountable.
I don't know. That sounds kind of like theoretical and sci-fi, which is one thing that I kind of don't like about David Friedman when he talks about anarchy, is that it always sounds like, because David Friedman's, no offense to him, I mean, he's not going to hear this, but he's kind of a nerd.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of him, but he's kind of a, he does write sci-fi stuff. And so when he talks about anarchy, he talks about it in a form of like, I don't know, it just sounds not real. And
well,
so
there's a thing about that too, where like I say there's a burden of intelligence, like a level of entry for intelligence for these things, but there's also a thing where I'm in a position where like I actually understand violence, and some of these nerds that are doing this anarchy and free, they have no comprehension of actual violence.
Yeah.
And like they don't understand how like the non-aggression principle is, you got to get everybody to agree on that. If one person doesn't agree on it, then it's going to be a problem.
That's not true. The non-aggression principle is just a system of, basically, for lack of a better word, law that an anarcho-capitalist society, and I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, and I don't necessarily believe in the non-aggression principle, but that's one thing that a lot of people, including David Friedman, get wrong about the non-aggression principle, which again I don't believe in, but they think of that principle as a moral standard, versus basically replacing law. Like basically, the non-aggression would replace the concept of the law. Everything on the books, it would just be the non-aggression principle. So the only thing enforced would be acts of violence, acts that violate the non-aggression principle.
Yeah, but who's enforced them? The community. You have to be, if you're the bigger, powerful person.
Not necessarily. I mean,
that's how it works in nature. I mean, that's
not really. America's more powerful than Mexico. Brazil's more powerful than Uruguay.
Yeah, but we don't have any. They don't have anything we want. If we wanted them, I mean, that's why we have New Mexico and Texas and all that. We wanted it.
Yeah.
So we went and got it. That's.
I don't know.
We violated the non-aggression principle.
Sure.
In the Mexican-American War. So,
yeah, well, in every war.
That's what I'm saying. We got the parts of Mexico. I mean, we went to Mexico City. We could have had all of Mexico.
See, but also there's no we. I didn't do any of that, and also
our government did. But
also, from my perspective, I don't have a government. I have a bunch of people who, unfortunately, boss me around at the threat of violence. So
they'll put you in a cage. So yeah.
That's one thing I wanted to talk about, is why is the government wrong? Not necessarily how anarchy would answer certain things or the questions, but so the premise. Let's start with that first. I think we're a little past the start.
Yeah, it don't matter.
The premise of anarchy. So why is the government wrong? Why is the government bad? Well, from my perspective, I would say you got to understand what is the government. What is the state, right? A lot of people, you tell them you don't think there should be a government at all, and in their mind, they think, oh, well, the government is police, is mailmen, is the people who make the roads, and so in their mind, what you're saying to them is, I don't think we should have police or the mail or roads, and it's like, and in a way, they're right about the police thing, but I'll clarify later. But it's like, not necessarily. What is the government, right? Well, the government I was just in I was in a college class, U.S. government, and the definition they use, and most definitions are similar to this, but is the legitimate use of force in a given territorial area. Yeah. Now, I would disagree with the word legitimate. I would say that's the whole problem, is that it's not legitimate, but a lot of definitions are like that. Monopoly on violence.
It's like you're born into the legitimacy. Just because you're born here, I have a problem with that too. It's like you're born here, so you fall under these laws.
Yeah. So monopoly on violence is another big definition. So what the government is, all the government is is that entity that has the monopoly on violence. The government's the only authority that can arrest you. The government's the only one that can lock you in a cage and have police. The whole you have to pay taxes, right? You don't pay taxes, you go to jail. You don't want to go to jail, well, then they're going to forcefully make you go to jail. If you want to fight back, well, then they're going to kill you.
I was thinking about this today too. Like, I don't think the founding fathers' idea of government was too far off from the anarcho-syndicalists. Like, it's the problem.
That's an interesting idea.
It is. If you think about back in that time period and where they were and everything, I don't know, because it's when we started paying government officials, and like they had, their incentives. Granted, they were all the rich guys and everything, but their incentives are more in line with the people. Mm-hmm. And the anarchists are more, they want self-governance.
I think any syndicalist that you would say that to would get really mad at you, because what syndicalists would say is, well, all those people own slaves, so they're not very close to our idea at all.
Yeah, right. But as far as that goes, but back then slaves were more of an economic thing than a racial issue.
Yeah, but I mean that's the whole syndicalist argument. Is that economic idea is extremely immoral, which I mean,
right? But they're it's like they're like a union, like a labor union basically, instead of a government.
Well, a labor union to the fullest extent, to where there's no boss to
a revolutionary.
You don't ask your boss, hey, can you pay us all more? No, it's like there is no.
Right.
There's no boss.
You throw out the boss. Yeah.
See, a lot of the syndicalist stuff, though, was written when there was, like, big factories that everyone worked at.
Well, the problem, in Spain, was the disparity. It was Spanish, so their issue was, like, they had all this, like, a large farming population, but then they were starting in like Barcelona and stuff like that to get factories and stuff like that, and the owners of the factories were starting to get a lot more power.
Yeah,
but
we're talking about Catalonia.
Yeah, but the problem is, anarchists were so easy to smash down.
Yeah,
I mean because. The fascists...
Well, they weren't that easy, actually.
Well, yeah, but the fascist and the republic got together, and then it's over.
Yeah.
They go, well, we can't let these guys win, because they just don't want any rulers.
2-3 world powers to, quench them or destroy them, so I don't know how easy that was. But, yeah, I mean, I guess, is your point that, like, anarchy is kind of an untried idea? Because I would agree with that to an extent.
No, I don't think it's a feasible idea, because it's too easy to just swat it down. Because if you had if we had a anarchist party or whatever, that wouldn't make sense. But if we had an anarchist movement here, I mean, there's no, it wouldn't gain any ground.
Well, it's gaining a lot of ground. I'm going to pick up this book. This book was like one of the top sellers on Amazon.
As an idea, it is.
It's picking up a lot. I
bought
3 copies of that book.
Yeah.
It's a book about anarchy.
Michael Malice.
Yeah, what's
the Anarchist Handbook.
Anarchist Handbook, yeah. Everyone should check it out.
But... yeah, as an idea, it's definitely gaining steam, especially with Michael Malice and everything. But as far as its application, I was I just don't see how it's going to be applied ever.
See, that's everyone's argument against it.
Until, like I said, until everybody's needs are met and security.
Oh, you think it would only happen at that point?
At that, at that point, or we regress. If we blow each other up back to the Stone Age, then we can go back to anarchy.
Well, I want to clarify something I said at the beginning. I said that you asked a question, and I said I don't think anarchy will ever happen.
Right.
And I want to clarify, actually. I don't think it'll ever happen in our lifetimes.
Right.
In my lifetime, in your lifetime, and anyone who is listening to this, or at least listening to this fairly recently. Probably not but that doesn't necessarily matter to me.
Right.
I think it could it happen? Absolutely, I do.
Right.
I do think it could, and it should. Hopefully it will. unfortunately, I don't think it'll be within my lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing they always say, like, where has there ever been an anarchist society? And they'll bring up, not Sharon, which is another example of an anarchist society, but what's the one we were just talking about? Catalonia. Yeah. They'll bring up Catalonia. They'll say, like, it took 3 years or however long it lasted for it to be smashed.
Well, the Spanish Civil War, it was, there's more involved than just those. So, but the idea, I think, started in 1932, and then they didn't actually start going to war till 36.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it took 3 years. But the problem is, it was like a 3 or 4 way war. It wasn't just one on one.
I don't think I ever finished saying that one thing I was saying about what the government is.
Oh yeah.
So the government is the violence.
Yeah.
That's what that's all the government is.
Right.
The government, or at least the threat of violence, and that's something that people really need to understand. Is that, even if you're like not an anarchist, agree with this. Like, people who, the most authoritarian people will that's just what the government is. That you can disagree with everything I say. You can't disagree with the fact that that's all the government.
And that's kind of what I was saying is too. Like, the founding fathers didn't want a huge federal government, and
most of them did.
And they knew that those weren't paid positions originally. Mm-hmm. When we start making them paid positions, that's when their incentives with the people start getting screwed up. So they don't share incentives with the people that they're representing anymore.
Yeah,
and that's where the government just ran wild.
Yeah, I want to say something about the founding fathers in a second, but the thing about it being violence. So if it's violence, the anarchist sees that, sees that, and says, okay, I believe it's possible to live in a world where society does not live in a system that operates on the threat of violence.
Yeah.
That's all anarchism is.
Yeah.
I believe it's possible for society to operate without the threat of violence.
Right. But then, so here's a thought. What about bullying in an anarchical society? What if I go and shit on my neighbor's front doorstep every day?
Yeah, when I say the threat of violence, I mean for the system that we're all in. And anarchy would be a lack of a system, or not. Yeah. Some forms would be. But that's what I mean. Not necessarily society would exist without threats of violence sporadically happening. I mean, I don't think it's necessary for society to be propped up, and for us all to live under a system that's based on the threat of violence. I think the system, not necessarily violence wouldn't happen, or there wouldn't be threats of violence, but the system doesn't need to operate. And if it doesn't operate on the threat of violence, and this is another thing people need to understand, then it's not a government from the anarchist perspective. So if you have, police is the weird one, I threw that in there, but if you have roads, if you have the mail, if you have things that operate, but they operate without the threat of violence, then that's no longer a state-run thing in the anarchist perspective.
This is why I say technology is going to help with that, is because when you can no longer get away with things, then the threat of violence is starting to go away. Right now, the problem is you can get away with it.
Sure.
You can get away with property theft. Police only solve 18% of property theft.
Well,
they only solve about 40-something% of violent crime, and that's about only 50% reported. So really, about a quarter of it.
Yeah, I've said this to you before while we were talking, though, but those numbers change if you look at, let's say, violent crimes against police officers.
Yeah, they solve those.
Yeah, they solve those.
Whether they get the right person or not. I mean, the FBI has made a career out of entrapping people. I mean, that's pretty much all they do now.
Yeah.
Apparently, I saw this the other day. Apparently, when they got tipped off about the Boston Marathon bombers, but they were busy with a case and trapping a guy, so they didn't. They had to finish that up before they investigated those brothers, and then the bomb went off. So.
And I laugh because it's funny, but also it's not funny.
But
also it's funny.
I mean, it's ridiculous that they've just
they
just decide who's gonna break the law, and
And so, yeah, I believe it's, so that's my point, is that just because I'm an anarchist, I don't believe the government should exist, doesn't mean I don't think there should be roads.
Right.
Doesn't mean I don't think there should be mail. Doesn't think, there is things that the government does. I'd say most things that I don't, they shouldn't exist at all in any shape, form, or fashion. Things like the DEA or the IRS.
And again, this is where, technology has helped with things like GoFundMe and stuff like that. You can have private, private money going to do good things.
Yeah, that's the whole crypto argument. I'm not really too read up on it. I don't understand it, but whatever.
I have issues with crypto too. I think I went pretty hard on them on the economics podcast. But you can't price anything in crypto. You go to buy a new car. If you went to a car lot and you priced every car in Bitcoin, the price would have to change every day, multiple times a day.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Unless you tie it to American dollar, you're like, it's the equivalent of this. So because it's being traded, right now, and it's a commodity and not a currency right now, or technically both, it's not really feasible.
Yeah.
And it's always tied to some form of another currency. So I just don't see how that's going to play out until it's maybe a government fails, or I don't know, the government's going to smack it down before anything actually happens. So they'll go to war over that for sure.
Yeah. That's the point, is just that I think society can exist without a threat of violence. I also think, I think the government is two things, and anarchists will argue about which one goes first or which one's more important. But I think if either one's true, then the other one's true, and they're both kind of equally important. And so I'd say the government is two things. It's evil, and it's unnecessary.
Right.
Right? And so if either one of those is true, then the other one is true. If it's unnecessary, well, then it's evil. The fact that they do all this, and then the only real argument you can have for government is that it's necessary.
Right.
And if it's not, well, then that's evil, right? The fact that they're lying to everybody, convincing us that it's necessary, propagandizing people into believing that it's necessary.
Right.
And that's evil. And the other way around, if it's evil, well, then it's unnecessary. If this whole system is immoral and evil, well, then there has to be another way.
Right.
To organize.
I do think so. I do have a weird thing about the whole evil aspect. I do think the government is just so gluttonous and everything that I don't really have a problem with you calling that evil. But when it comes to scarcity and I think morals are on a sliding scale. So
you think you believe in relative morality, subjective morality? Yeah,
so if your morals are in one place until your needs aren't being met and they start creeping down.
Sure.
And then the more pressure that is put on your life, whether, to survive, the lower your morals are. That's when people resort to cannibalism. And I think it's like that too with populations and in land. So, I mean, if you have land that has water and things are growing on it and everything, and the people next to you don't, their morals are going to be lowered because they're in a different situation. Yeah. So it's they don't have a problem breaking the non-aggression principle to go get water from you.
I don't believe in the non-aggression principle.
Right.
Also, I would, if you want to just talk about morality, this doesn't really loop in with anarchism that much. It kind of does. I would say it's immoral if you have plenty of water and plenty of food and your neighbors are starving.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, man, but then the thing is, the population grows until you run out of stuff, and then it collapses back down. So
you were describing too much food or in excess. That's what I was thinking.
Right. Well, so I mean, it's going to be a variable either way because it's not contained. So if you spread the food out, then the people have food are going to have more kids. And then it's going to expand until they start, there's not enough food to go around, and then things start getting scarce, and it starts to collapse back down.
Well, you're thinking about it backwards. Things don't get scarce; they are scarce, right? And you're saying in the future.
Well, if one person has it and they start spreading it around.
Oh yeah, well
equally.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That when it starts spreading around, everybody has everything they need equally. The populations grow. Like they're comfortable enough to have kids, and then they'll have kids to a point where there's not enough to go around anymore. Yeah. I mean, these are rat studies. I mean, that's basically. I mean, and then the population is going to start collapsing back down. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's basically how the rat studies work.
Okay, how does anarchism loop into that though? What's the?
I'm more talking about the non-aggression principle, and I mean, I guess it would kind of apply. I mean, anarchism. It is weird because I don't know how to apply it on a mass scale.
It doesn't. There's no mass scale,
right? Yeah,
because people live in a government or live in a country that has a government and that rules over. There's 300 million people. That's what everyone always say. They're like, I don't see how this could work on a mass scale. And it's like, well, I'm not thinking about it on a mass scale.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But you're not in a system safe to do it on a small scale either. That's what I'm saying. Like
maybe not, but in a system of anarchy, like the system of anarchy would be lack of a system. But there's no reason in society unless it was we wanted it. Me and a guy in Indiana or in Hawaii. That's a guy over there.
Right.
Hawaii's all the way over. We wouldn't be in. There's no reason we should be.
But you can hop on a plane and go there right now.
Sure, and then I'd be under whatever they would be. But there's no. And so they're like, whoa, we needed to. How is it going to work in both, Louisiana and like Oregon or California? And the answer is it's not. That's the whole point. It's not working. The people in Louisiana, the people in Arkansas, don't really like the people in California.
Right.
Why? Because they all have to live in the same federal government and fight each other.
Well, yeah, we're not supposed to have that. The reason we have states, we're not even the United States of America anymore. It's just America now. Just federal America.
Just all one country. And so that's the idea would be like, if you got to talk to different people differently about anarchy. And like I said at the beginning, my whole goal when talking about anarchy, because I don't know if you know this, but anarchy doesn't really have a great reputation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we just sound ridiculous to people when you start ironing out these ideas, because
people think of like the bomb throwing Molotov cocktail with a guy with a like a whatever, you know what I'm saying,
right?
Mask throwing a bomb into a building, and like that's the vision. Or they think of like some dumb rebellious teenager, like they don't think of it as a. And so as long as you don't
that's the Marxist anarchist,
Yeah.
That's
I don't know. I have a lot of respect for, especially for the old, a lot of the Marxist anarchists, I think, like communist.
He thought it was going to come about naturally, and then Marx
wasn't an anarchist.
I know, but I think he thought rebellion, was going to come about naturally, not like violent rebellion.
The whole Lenin thing. He was like, these guys aren't going to rebel on their own. Maybe we can.
That's when Antifa comes in, right? Yeah, yeah. That's where you get. But
not Buchanan. What's his name? He's in that book that I just pulled out, and he was one of the, not Alexander Berkman. His name starts with a B. He's like he's like Kropotkin. He was in the same.
I almost never remember all these libertarian anarchist dudes' names and shit.
On the back of the list, let's see. Bakunin. Bakunin. He was Marx's great rival.
Yeah.
In fact, that chapter in that book is him explaining why Marx's version of communism wouldn't work, and he kind of got it right on the nose. Or why the USSR wouldn't work is because it would lead to a dictatorship.
Well, so isn't Marx writes Das Kapital and pretty much nails down capitalism and as it like being in a boom bust cycle. And
I haven't read Das Kapital.
Do I?
I haven't read it. So
I've watched documentaries on it. It is freaking brutal to try to read. I don't know if it's the language being switched from Russian or German or whatever to English. There's just something about trying to read it that just is brutal.
I tried to read the manifesto, and I couldn't.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Well, the thing, I also tried to read a little bit of Stirner. I'll have to try again for both of them, for all of them. But the thing that I don't understand is, you're translating it from German, right?
Right.
So you're really just translating the ideas. So just make the words more clear.
Yeah.
Like why?
They have different meanings and stuff,
word.
I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so he pretty accurately describes like how, the owners, the worker.
Say Marx pretty accurately described anything ever?
In Das Kapital, yeah. Because, he's talking about the cycle of capitalism.
Yeah.
How the owners of the businesses will consolidate power. Mm-hmm. And choke down the wages of the workers until the workers get to a point where they rebel.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with inflation and fractional reserve banking, we've kind of negated that natural cycle of capitalism.
You genuinely think that the natural cycle of capitalism is a boom bust?
Well, you were supposed to have, like, their natural instinct is to suppress the wages of the workers, the owners of the business. And then it usually gets to a point where the workers start demanding more. It doesn't have to be rebellion every time. There could be a balance to it. But that's what he's describing in it. And with inflation, fractional reserve banking, we've been able to negate these busts, like the way we just did quantitative easing in 2008, which you don't remember, but we just pump up. We're kind of doing it now with. I would
have been in kindergarten.
Yeah,
in 2008,
and we're doing it now. We're just pumping a bunch of money into the system. To keep it from busting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, that's like Keynesianism, right? But to the founding fathers,
right?
There was something I want. So people will often ask, like, anarchy has never been tried, right? Or there's not really many, and for the most part, they're right about that.
Right.
There's small examples that anarchists will go back and point out, and they're interesting to look at, and they're interesting but they're basically right. There is no, like, anarchy is a largely untried idea. Like they'll look at, like, ancient Ireland or Iceland or even Sharon right now in Mexico. But my argument against that would be, what has worked? The government we have right now is not anywhere near what we had 200 years ago. I say we tried big government, we tried small government, I say now we try.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's a cycle. Like, we're getting to a point where our government's going to fail. We're going to have to start over with something.
Yeah. I forget who it said, but who said it? But they said all governments must get smaller. Or adding this, but or stay the same size, or they will collapse.
Right.
And I agree with that to the point of, I think the government should get small down to the individual, and then there's no government. You are your own government. You govern yourself.
Right. You mentioned Sharon. That's pretty cool. Like, if anybody look at Sharon, Mexico, is a city of like 20,000 people, and they kicked out all the politicians and all the police. Yeah. And I guess they did it in like 2011. So it's still
fairly recently.
Yeah.
There's a great documentary about it on YouTube called Homage to Sharon.
I think HBO has one now too,
okay.
Or Vice. Yeah.
Yeah, you should check it out. Homage to Sharon.
And it's not perfect, but
no, it's
not. It's. I think they say that crimes went down drastically, without the government there, It's which that was the whole thing, is the police and the government were all corrupt and they were in it together.
Or probably cartel stuff, and that's the whole thing about, as an anarchist, the way I look at the government, the way I look at the state is in no shape, form, or fashion different than a mafia. Different than a cartel, different than a gang. In no way is it different. And absolutely, except maybe size.
Right.
But and so when you say to me, I don't think it, to anyone, not this is a general you.
Yeah.
But when you say, I don't think we could exist without a government, it's the same to me as saying, well, I don't think we could exist without a mafia. It's like, well, I think we could. I think we could do it without a mafia. I think we could do it without this system predicated on.
Right. I think that's true as long as everybody's needs are met. As soon as you start getting scarcity, you start getting violence. And
yeah,
that's. But one thing,
not necessarily though, because scarcity doesn't necessarily equal.
Well,
violence.
if you
could have voluntary trade. You could have
right, but in the past, it's always like the people that have usually used violence to keep the have-nots from getting it, you know. And not always. And if you read The Prince,
most of the time,
Machiavelli is The Prince.
Okay.
I mean, it really explains how to rule people.
Yeah.
And it's,
I haven't read much of Machiavelli, but I know
almost
a good amount about him.
So it's kind of a weird story. Like the book didn't get popular till like 5 years after he died, and it didn't even have a title. It was actually he wrote it as like a resume to give to a king to be like, hey, let me help you. You know, let me come work for you. And he didn't get the job, died, and then like 5 years later, I guess somebody found it and was like, hey, this is pretty damn good.
Yeah,
but almost all like politicians these days read The Prince. A lot of them over in Europe like go to Machiavelli's house and they worship this dude.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you saying Prince or Prince?
The Prince
like
is the name of the
king.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Prince is the name of the book.
Okay.
And I guess it's just a random name,
yeah.
but it definitely talks about how like the different way to handle things if you're ruling over people that aren't the same religion as you, or how you came about your leadership position. Like, did you come by force, or
they all do.
Well, yeah, pretty much. But yeah, he talks about different ways to rule over the population, and that is. I mean, the government uses that as a damn playbook. It talks about how if you're wanting to implement something to the population, like a law to the population that's not going to be popular with them, to set up a fall guy, which sounds familiar with how they're doing Biden right now. So I like you're wanting to force all these laws through, and then you freaking blame it on that guy, fire him, and then be like, sorry about all that shit that guy did. I didn't know he was doing it.
Yeah. And
then they're like, so you're going to undo those laws, right? And he's like, no.
That's the thing about what we live in now is we live under a bunch of laws that were written by people who aren't alive anymore.
Right.
Right. And so people get in the government and they go, I'm going to change it. But it's a lot harder to change a law once it's on. And okay, here's another thing. Sometimes I'm like that, I think of another thing and then I interrupt myself. Yeah. But the government, everything it does is on the threat of violence, right?
Right.
So here's what I try to explain this to people, like in my family or my friends or anything. A law, not like science, but a law. It's not real. It doesn't exist. There's nothing.
And I think I've heard Malice talk about that too. Yeah. It's more than just him, but yeah, if we don't obey those laws, then like every day, there's people speeding down the interstate, and it's the laws aren't enforced perfectly. So
but also like literally, there is no such thing as the law, right? So. If I think I'm repeating probably Malice here, but
not until you get caught.
If mangoes are illegal, right?
Yeah.
What day is today? Tuesday. Well, if they say today that mangoes are illegal, Wednesday there's probably not going to be many mangoes at the store. Once people realize that this law is not enforced at all in any shape, form, or fashion, it'll
still be there.
There's no fine. There's no anything. It's just something someone wrote. Well, then. You're probably going to start seeing mangoes at the store again, right?
Right.
And so that's just a thought experiment to explain to you that, by you, I mean the listener or anyone, that there is no such thing as the law. The only thing there is what is enforced.
Right.
Right? And so if it's enforced, if you actually do get in trouble for selling mangoes, well, then that's actually a law.
Yeah.
Right? And so from the anarchist perspective, look at it on a human level. Is there anything the government does that they enforce that they do not have the authority to do. Now, the anarchists would say that's everything.
Well, yeah. Well, they're definitely doing it now, but yeah.
And it's like, okay,
mandates, but
if you believe that the government is enforcing laws that are unjustified, well, you're starting to think like an anarchist. It's like, okay, well, there's limits on what the government can do. Why? Now think of all the governments as like just person-to-person interactions.
Right.
If someone pulled you over and, they didn't like what plants or whatever are in your car, and they can't just like tackle you, or I don't know that. When you use the weed example or drugs example, people, especially as a younger person or as an anarchist, they'll kind of like hand wave you, or they'll think like, oh, you just want to do drugs, that's why you're saying that. But
yeah.
I mean, like, look at everything the government does as just if I did it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it unjustified at some point? And
the people applying them are never following them either, so that turns into a big issue. Like they get away with it way more, and I think it's probably the same thing. Noam Chomsky talks about this too. Is like the more money you have, they've done political science studies on this. The more effect you have on government, and then the same thing was like the more money you have, the less time you'll do in prison for breaking the same laws.
I just flew back from Orlando, and in the line is in the TSA line. There's another line next to it called like TSA Fast Pass or something like that, or pre or whatever, and it's like, basically, if you pay for this subscription,
if you pay the government more, you can do it faster.
You can go through it faster.
You have more money,
and it's like, okay, from my perspective, that's not in any way different than like in India or some other corrupt country where the cops
you're bribing the government.
You just pay us a little more, we'll let you through faster.
Yeah,
it's like, no, TSA pre. That's what are you less likely to be? Because you paid more? That's just open corruption. You're
sliding TSA at 20 to get you in faster. Yeah,
they just have a sign that says like, what are you going to do? You have no power over it.
Right.
You give us more money. Speeding tickets. That's only that's only a punishment if you're poor.
Yeah.
If $200 is a lot of money to you, which it is to me, then that's a lot, right? But if $200 is nothing, then you don't really have to.
Right. Okay, I know you didn't want to talk about this, or you kind of said it would be a podcast on its own, but I got to ask you about this real quick, because you always say you're a Christian anarchist.
Oh, okay, all right.
And do you not view religion as a form of government?
Of course not, no.
Okay, now how so? Because in the past, I mean, that's
the reason we have separation of church and state.
I know, but that like
the same thing. Right?
Yeah, right. But
okay. Actually,
the government gave you the separation of church and state? Wow. But the government, I mean, I'm Catholic, so I see it as, I mean, it was a form of ruling over people. That's why it was created in the first place. That's what
the government.
That's what Pope Constantine's whole.
Constantine the Great.
Yeah, the emperor. He was pagan and then saw this great opportunity to take Christianity and bastardize it into a way to consolidate all the pagans that he had and the new Christians and all that stuff all under one roof.
Yeah,
basically.
I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't read much about whatever you're talking about. Yeah, okay. Keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, it was they basically created. I mean, Christianity was its its own religion, but he turned it into Catholicism under the Roman emperor, turned it into a way to rule the people, and it was about consolidating power. That's why all of Christian religions or holidays are based on pagan holidays.
Sure, yeah.
They're all astrological.
Yeah, that much.
Yeah, because Christmas is Saturnina. So on the 21st is the day the sun is the lowest in the sky. It sits there for 3 days, and then on Christmas the sun rises. So Jesus' birthday happens to be on the day, the astrological day where the sun rises. So what he was doing was trying to consolidate the Christian religion with pagan religions. And same thing with Easter is the equinox.
Okay.
So he was kind of making all the celebrations the same, but I mean, it's almost a way of ruling over people, and you don't choose your religion when you're first born. You learn, learn about it. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because all of Western civilization is based on Christianity.
I think all, I don't like people when they disrespect, well, I mean, I am religious, but all religions, I think. 'Cause I've also considered, and I think this is another thing you have to have a certain level of intelligence to do, but consider what the world would be like if you're wrong. So I'm a Christian. What would the world be like if I'm wrong, even if atheism is correct? And I think like I still come to similar conclusions about like the government and stuff. But here, ask your question again, because I actually have a different answer now.
Okay, so do you not see religion as a form of government?
Your question is correct, but it's backwards. I see the government as a form of a religion.
Well, I get that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, genuinely, people who, like the most hardcore patriots I see, they're just people who believe in a different religion than mine. Except,
people go kill for the government, and people go kill for their religion all the time, too.
I mean, that's a lot of the things the state does is almost the same as what religions do, like the flag thing, Pledge of Allegiance. It's just a religious ceremony.
Yeah,
I mean, stuff like that. The national anthem before games, the flag. Yeah,
and I think Malice is careful to make this point too. Is that like all the moralities and like all Western civilization is based on Christian morality.
Yeah. Oh, what I was saying a second ago, I interrupted myself again. I don't like, even as an atheist, if you even thinking about the world in an atheist perspective, I still think there's a lot of wisdom to all religions, because all religions stem from early man trying to figure out what the world is, and I think that's something that's very right. You shouldn't hand wave, and maybe the atheist argument is that there's a lot of wisdom to look at in history, to look at like the Norse mythologies.
Well, yeah, that's what Malice is saying too. Is like the atheists value Christian morals. They don't identify them as Christian morals, but the morals that they value are Western civilization, like based on Christian morals.
And maybe the atheist argument would be, well, the Norse mythology is a dead religion, and now we can look at it with a more open mind. But as long as Christianity is still alive, and maybe they're right in that argument, but that's a different argument. I still think that there's a lot of, so that's just my point about even if I was an atheist, I wouldn't like to hand wave. So, but yeah, a Christian anarchist, the state is a religion with all their things that you do, and you say you don't think there should be a government, you don't think there should be a country, you don't think there should be a America. That's what I believe. And then people will look at you like, oh, you like that's heresy. That's,
right. But see, I mean, I can see it easily being replaced with something like the Vatican freaking ruling over people. The Middle Ages.
Still.
You do what?
That would be a state. It doesn't matter who's at the head of the state, whether they're secular, whether they're religious.
So your religion can become a state,
of course.
Yeah,
and it has.
So,
and I think that's. I haven't thought about this before, but so this made me open my eyes. Is maybe because there is a history of state intermingling with
almost exclusively. Yeah.
Maybe that's why they do these tactics like the Pledge of Allegiance, like the national anthem. Why they have the same, kind of ideas and practices. And 4th of July, there's another one. I've just been trying to think of state religious holidays.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's about it. All I have for the show.
We're done now?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. Everybody's probably checked out or killed themselves by now.
But that was your last question?
Yeah. I don't. Right. Is there anything else that you want to?
I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts, man. Always, and so hopefully next time I can be a little more. If there's a next time.
No problem. Like I'm sure we'll do it again and talk about some other stuff. But
maybe I could go into the Christian part a little bit more. I didn't really.
Yeah, I'll give you that'll give you something to think about, and because I can definitely go deeper into that. And like I said, I'm not hating on it or anything. Like, I have respect for it. I was raised in it and everything.
Oh,
but
I thought you were talking about anarchy.
Oh, no.
Like,
No, but
anarchist?
no. But, yeah. I don't have anything coming up other than, do you have anything to plug?
Not right now.
Okay, I don't think I have any shows coming up that I know of right now, but what is it, the 27th that we're doing the Halloween show at the Grove? So we're going to do an open mic at the Grove on the 27th, but we're going to do each other's sets. This fool's going to tell some of my jokes, I'm telling Conrad's, so it's going to be fun.
Name dropping Conrad.
Yeah, so come check out the River Valley Comics at the Grove in Northwest Arkansas then.
Follow me on Instagram, the man himself 187. That's me.
All right, and I'm Adam Is Not Funny.
See you.
Thanks for watching the Playing Your Fools podcast. We'll see you next time.
I'm Nicolas Cage. Have a great fucking night.
Oh, yeah.